Hello guys, welcome back to another video. This is your performance management tutor, Sir Uzair Awan, and this video is a continuation of the chapter CVP analysis. Now, if this is the first time that you have landed on this video, let me tell you that I have made around 6 to 7 videos before this in which we have covered all the things regarding the CVP analysis, regarding the single products and the multi-products, okay? So it's better that you go and first watch those videos so you can straighten your concept and then you can come back to this video to watch it, okay? Now the topic of today's video is that we will learn how to make the contribution chart, how to make the break-even chart and the profit volume chart in case of multi-products. And multi-products, like we discussed in our previous video, is the scenario where you have more than one product in the question. So let's start. This is a question that I have written over here as a sample, and we will be taking the values from here to make our graphs, okay? We have 3 products, product A, product B, and product C. The selling price are given to us, variable costs are given to us, contribution are given to us, budgeted sales and fixed costs are given to us, okay? So let's start with the very first, the break-even chart, okay? Now, those of you who have watched my previous video, we learned that in break-even chart, you actually have 3 lines, right? In a break-even chart, you have 3 lines. The first one is of total costs, then we have of total revenue and of fixed costs, right? So the fundamentals of drawing a break-even chart could be the same over here as well, right? You will have your y-axis, right? And you will have your x-axis. Now, in the x-axis, we used to write the units, right? So it could be the same over here. And in the y-axis, we used to write the revenue. So it is going to be the same over here, right? And this one is number 1, the break-even chart. Okay. Now, if you remember that how we used to draw the graph, we used to always take the budgeted units as our maximum units on the x-axis, as our maximum number on the x-axis, right? Now, budgeted sales unit, if you look in this question, we have 3 products. So what you will do, because this is a multi-product graph, so obviously you would take the data of all the 3 products. So if I have to take the budgeted sales of all the 3 products, it's very simple. For A, it's 1000, for B, it's 2500, and for C, it's 1500. So that adds up to 5000, correct? So 5000 is my maximum budgeted sales. I'm going to write over here 5000, and this is always 0, right? And if you remember from my previous lecture, I told you that you always mark your 0 and your budgeted sales maximum number 5000, and then in between you can allocate the scale in whatever way you like. You can write 1000, 2000, 3000, 4000 and 5000, or you can do 1500, 3000, 4500, anything. You can just break the scale in whatever way you like, right? But the most appropriate, the way that I would like to break it is obviously 1000, 2000, right? 3000, 4000, and then finally 5000. All right. Now let's talk about the y-axis, which is revenue. Now, if you remember, we used to do the revenue in the same way that we used to mark our 0, which is over here. And now we are going to mark our maximum revenue. Now, the maximum revenue, how would you calculate that? Obviously, you are going to look at your selling price, right? So selling price per unit is 40. Look over here. Selling price per unit is 40, and you're going to multiply it with 1000. Because remember, this is multi-product chart, right? So you are going to calculate the total revenue. Unlike the break-even chart that we used to draw for single product, over there, obviously, it used to be a single product. So you don't have to calculate the total revenue. You just used to take the revenue of that product and that's it. But over here, because it's a multi-product chart, so that obviously you cannot take revenue of any one product. You have to take the total revenue. And how would you calculate the total revenue? You're going to take the selling price of product A, times it by the units, which are 1000, right? This is 1. Then you're going to add it with the second unit selling price, which is $50, and multiply it with its budgeted sales, 2500. All right. This is the second. Then you are going to add it with the third product selling price, which is 45, times the number of units, which are 1500, right? So that is going to give you your total revenue. So let's quickly do that on our calculator. 40 times 1000 plus 50 times 2500 plus 45 times 1500. So that is 232,500. 232,500. Okay. So we're going to come to our y-axis and we're going to write the maximum revenue, which is 232,500. Okay. This is 0. This is 232,500. You can break the y-axis, the scale of the y-axis in whatever way you like, right? So 40,000, 80,000, right? And then we have 120,000. So I'm just trying to allocate the scale in the way that I like, okay? And like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be like this. You can break the scale in whatever way you like, okay? So 232,500 over here, right? And let me just erase this to 40,000, okay? And the total revenue that we got was how much? The total revenue that we got was 232,500, right? So I'm just going to write 232,500 because it is going to be somewhere between 240 and 200. So let me just write it somewhere over here. 232,500. Okay. So this is how I would like my scale to look like. Again, it's your choice. You can allocate in whatever way you want. So now we have our x-axis and y-axis in place, right? What do we need to do now? We need to basically now draw our lines, right? So let's go and try to draw the fixed cost line first, because remember that break-even chart has 3 lines: total revenue, total cost, fixed cost, right? And this is something we have discussed in detail in our previous classes. So fixed cost is 40,000 and it is going to remain the same no matter what the units are, right? So let me just draw a straight line, a horizontal line on $40,000. Okay, that is our fixed cost line. Clear? Now we have to draw the total cost line. Now remember, the total cost would be obviously for all the 3 products. The total cost is going to be obviously for all the 3 products because you are drawing the break-even chart for multi-product, okay? So you're going to take the total cost. Now, how do we take the total cost? Now, when it says total cost, remember that it has to be the variable cost plus the fixed cost. First of all, we are going to calculate the total variable cost. Right? And then we are going to add into it the fixed cost. That is how we are going to get a total cost, right? So it is going to be a total variable cost plus the fixed cost, right? That is how you're going to get your total cost, correct or no? Right? And when I say total variable cost, it means total variable cost of all 3 products, right? So that is going to be 30. That is the variable cost of product A times 1000, right? So 30 times 1000 plus 35 times 2500, right? 35 is the variable cost for product B times 2500, that's the units, right? Plus the variable cost for product C is 40 times 1500. 40 times 1500, okay? This is going to give us our total variable cost, right? And then we'll have to add the fixed cost into it to get the total cost of fixed cost is going to be 40,000, as you guys can see, fixed cost, right? Okay. So if you do this on your calculator, you will have your total cost. So let's see what is our total cost. 30 times 1,000. 35 times 2,500 plus 40 times 1,500 plus 40,000. So that comes out to be 217,500. That is our total cost. Okay. So we have our total cost as 217,500. Okay. And we previously calculated our total revenue as 232,500. But right now we are concerned with total cost, which is 217,500. And now we're going to come to our graph. And as you know, that the total cost line always starts from the fixed cost line. Remember, I told you this in the last class, that our total cost line always starts from above the fixed cost line, right? And where would it end? Obviously, it is going to end at the amount that we just calculated, which is 217,500, right? So at a budgeted sales of 5,000 units, our cost is how much? 217,500, right? So 217,500 would be somewhere above 200 but below 232, right? So let me just make a rough estimate. It is going to be where is the 5,000 unit? Over here, right? And let's just place the dot somewhere over here. Okay, remember that I have said this in my previous classes also. I'm going to repeat it over here. The right now I'm just drawing a rough graph just to give you guys an idea of how this is drawn, because remember, in the real exam you will not be asked to draw it, right? So it doesn't matter. But the reason why I'm teaching you how to draw it, so that you can know that what each line represents, how are each line drawn, what is the working behind each line. So when they ask you different questions in the MCQs regarding the graph, you can easily answer them once you know how they are drawn and what each area represents. Okay. So we are going to start from the fixed cost line and we are going to end it over here. So this is our total cost line. Clear? At 5,000 units, our total cost was 217,500, right? So at 5,000, I just placed a mark at 215,700, and it always starts from the fixed cost line, above the fixed cost line. So I just started from there, joined the points, and this is going to be my total cost line. Okay. And the third line that we have is for total revenue, right? So what was my total revenue? What was my total revenue over here? As you guys can see, we already calculated total revenue for our y-axis, and it came out to be 232,500. So that means at 5,000 units, my total revenue would be 232,500, which is over here, right? So this is going to be my total revenue. Okay. And as far as the total revenue line is concerned, you know that it always starts from the origin, which is 0, 0, right? Okay, so this is my total revenue line. All right. Okay, guys, so this is our break-even chart. Okay, for multi-product. In case of a multi-product, this is how you draw your break-even chart, right? Now, as far as the areas are concerned, it is going to be the same as what we have learned in the single product, that wherever the total cost and total revenue intersect, that is your break-even point, right? And then your break-even point and obviously your budgeted units, whatever comes between, that is your margin of safety, right? The area above the break even is the profit, the one that is below it is the loss, right? And the area between the total cost and the fixed cost, all this is basically your variable cost, right? So all these things remain the same even for the multi-product situations. Okay, we should just have the knowledge, all right, that how it is drawn, so that whenever MCQs come, you can easily tackle any kind of question related to the charts. Okay. Okay, so now I'm done with making the y-axis and the x-axis. Y-axis represents the revenue, x-axis represents the units, right? And what are we making? We are making the contribution chart. Now, contribution chart, remember that it's the same as the break-even chart, just that instead of the fixed cost line, you have the variable cost line, right? Again, something that we have already discussed in our previous videos. So as far as the total cost line is concerned, it is going to the same, just like in the break even, right? So what is our total cost? What was our total cost? It was 217,500, right? So I'm going to come and make the same line over here, 217,500, which would be somewhere over here, right? 217,500. Again, just a rough idea. All right. And then we have what? We have the line for total revenue. Total revenue was 232,500, right? So at 5,000 units, 232,500, it's going to be above over here, right? So these are the points for our two values, right? Now, as far as the revenue line is concerned, you know that it always starts from the origin. Total revenue always starts from the origin, and then it is going to meet the point. This is your total revenue line. And as far as total cost is concerned, it always starts above the fixed cost line. Now, obviously, in the contribution chart, you will not be drawing the fixed cost line, right? That's the difference between the break-even chart and the contribution chart. That in contribution chart, you do not draw a fixed cost line. Rather, you draw a total variable line, total variable cost line, okay? So yes, we would not be drawing the fixed cost line, but we do know from the question that our fixed cost was how much? 40,000. So I can just start above 40,000, right? I can start my line from above 40,000, correct? So I'm going to go back to my graph, start from above 40,000, okay? And I am going to join the point, okay? So this is going to be my total cost line, correct? And then lastly, we have the variable cost line. Now, total variable costs, remember this is multi-product. So you will take all three products variable costs, which we already did over here, right? But we also added the fixed cost, right? So this is the total cost, 217,500, that we have already calculated. So to save our time, what we will do, we will take this 217,500, which is the total cost. Total cost means that it has total variable cost plus the fixed cost, right? So I'm just going to remove the fixed cost from this amount, 217,500, minus the fixed cost, which is 40,000, right? So my total variable cost came out to be 177,500, right? So you can just multiply these and then add them to get your total variable cost. Or just to save time, what I did over here was that we have already calculated the total cost, which was total variable cost plus the fixed cost, and it came out to be 217,500. So I took this amount, the total cost amount, and subtracted the 40,000 fixed cost from it. So that way I got my total variable cost for all the three products, right? I'm going to come down and I'm going to write that now I'm going to place my point that at 5,000 units, my total variable cost is 177,500, right? So obviously it's going to be above 160, but below 200. So I'm just going to make a rough estimate that it is going to be somewhere over here, okay? And again, total variable cost, just like the total revenue cost, starts from the origin. It starts from the origin, okay? So this is my total variable cost. Got it? So that's how you make your contribution chart in a multi-product scenario. Is that clear? Okay, now the third graph that we have to learn is the PV chart, the profit to volume chart, right? And for this, you know that we have to extend our y-axis towards the negative size also, right? So that's the thing that we learned in our previous class. So I will have to extend only my y-axis a little downwards so that I can have negative y-axis, right? But that is only needed for the y-axis and not the x-axis. So I'm just going to extend this line downwards over here, right? And I am going to copy the scale that I wrote on the positive x-axis on the negative x-axis, right? So for example, this is going to be minus 40,000, right? Minus 80,000, right? And so on. We are going to continue. And so on, we are going to just complete our y-axis scale, okay? Okay, so I have completed my negative y-axis scale, and this is how my axis look like. Now I'm going to start drawing my profit to volume chart. Now, as you guys know, the first point that we make on a profit to volume chart is at 0 units, right? This is something we discussed in our previous class, that at 0 unit, you make your first point. So at 0 units, obviously you're not going to make any profit, right? So where do I place the point? I place the point at minus 40,000. Why? Because when you sell 0 units, you do not make any profit. But what you do is that you incur the fixed cost of 40,000, because no matter you sell 0 units or you sell 1,000 units, you still pay the fixed cost, because fixed cost is fixed. It doesn't matter how many units you pay, you will have to pay it, right? So 0 units, I will pay a negative 40,000, which means I'm going to make a loss of 40,000 because I'll be paying a fixed cost of 40,000 but not making any sales. Okay, so I place my first point at negative 40,000, right? That is the same thing we have learned in our previous classes in quite detail, right? Now the second point is going to be the profit at your budgeted units. So your budgeted units per 5,000 units, right? What is the profit at 5,000 units? So obviously you'll have to calculate that. And remember, when we say profit, it doesn't have to be profit of any single product. No, because this is multi-product. So you will be calculating the profit of all these 3 products combined, which could be very easy to do. Why? Because remember, we already calculated the total revenue. We already calculated the total cost. So can I not just subtract the total revenue with the total cost to get my profit? Obviously I can. So that's exactly what I'm doing. 232,500 minus 217,500. My profit came out to be as 15,000, right? And this is total profit, which combine all the 3 product sales and cost, right? So total profit came out to be 15,000. So 15,000 is obviously going to be above 0 but below 40,000. So I'm just going to make a rough estimate again that 15,000 would be somewhere over here. Okay, so 5,000 units and 15,000 revenue, right? And now, like always, we always, combine these 2 points. So I'm going to join these 2 points with the help of a line like this. And this is our profit to volume chart in a multi-product scenario where you have more than one product. Okay, so you see the fundamentals of all the 3 graphs are same, just like the way we have learned in our previous videos for the single product. It is the same, right? The only difference is that you are taking total cost of all the 3 products, total revenue of all the 3 products, profit of all the 3 products, right? So this is the only difference. Except for that, the axis, the way to make it, the areas, everything are same, just like the way we have learned in our previous videos in the case of single product. Okay, now before ending today's video, this is a very important thing that we need to discuss. Now, whatever we have learned so far about, the multi-products, that how the break-even charts are drawn, how the contribution charts are drawn, how the profit to volume charts are drawn, right? They were all based on constant mix. Remember that they were all based on constant mix, right? So all the 3 graphs that we have drawn over here, right? The technique that we have used is basically related to constant mix. Okay, just remember that constant mix. Okay, if the question says the graphs given to you or the break-even chart given to you or the contribution chart given to you has been drawn through a constant mix, so that means that they have drawn the graph like this, just like the way we have learned. Nothing difficult, right? But when it comes to profit volume chart only, okay, only to profit volume chart, they can also say that the graph is made in order of highest selling price first. The graph is made in order of the highest selling price first, right? Now, how does this change anything? That if you're drawing the graph in order of highest selling price first instead of the constant mix, then how would the things change? This is the last thing that we have to look at. And then after that, our syllabus is completed. Okay, our video series of CVB analysis would be completed. And before I teach you this, if you guys find this video helpful, if you have found the previous video helpful, then please make sure to subscribe my channel, as that is the only way to support me. So subscribe the channel, like the video, share with other friends who might find this helpful. Okay, so now the way the things will change is that it says in order of highest selling price first, right? So what we need to do is that we need to go back to our question and we need to check that what are the selling prices in our question. So if we go back to our question, you can see our selling price was how much? Our selling price was 40, 50 and 45. So if they have made the graph in order of the highest selling price first, that means that product B would have been made first on the list, then product C, and then product A, correct? So 1, 2, and 3. So that means B, C, and A. B, C, and A, right? So if they have made the graph in order of the highest selling price first, they would have made the graph of B first, then C, and then A. That is the order, right? First, second, third, correct? Now what we are going to do in order to draw this graph, obviously you would not be required to draw this graph, but you should have the understanding of how it is drawn so that you can answer any type of question that might come in the MCQ, okay? So the first point you guys know is always add where? At the fixed cost, right? Because at 0 units, you always incur your fixed costs only, right? And fixed cost, you might remember from the previous question, it was 40,000, right? Let me show you again, it's 40,000, correct? And then that's my first point, right? Now, if you look at the question, we have to draw the graph in order of highest selling price first. So what's my highest selling price over here? 50, right? So that means I'll be making product B first, right? So let's see what will be the profit at product B, because the selling price is the highest at product B, $50, right? So if this is the highest, I'm going to make product B first, correct? And now if I'm making product B first, I will have to calculate its profit, right? How would I do that? Very simple. You know that contribution is $15, right? So I'm going to take the $15 contribution and this is per unit. I'm going to multiply with the budgeted sales unit. So $15 contribution times it by the budgeted sales unit, which is 2,500. So that gives you 37,500. And from this 37,500, which is your total contribution, you're going to subtract the 40,000 fixed costs, right? So that means you're incurring a loss of 2,500. You're incurring a loss of 2,500, correct? Okay. So I took the contribution per unit 15 times it by the number of unit 2,500. I got my total contribution. And from this total contribution, I subtracted my fixed cost of 40,000. So that means that I'm incurring a loss of 2,500 because I'm getting 2,500, right? So what will I say? I'm going to say that at 2,500 unit, because for B, how many units that we made? We made 2,500 unit, right? So at 2,500 units, I'm making a loss of $2,500, right? So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say at 2,500 unit, which would be over here, right? This is 3,000, 4,000. This is going to be 2,500, right? I'm making a loss of how much? I'm making a loss of 2,500, right? And 2,500 would obviously be more than 0 but less than 40,000. So I'm just going to make a random point over here. Again, a rough estimate because we don't have to draw them in exam, but we are just learning to understand it, okay? So this is my what? This is my first point, right? And remember, we are making this as per the highest selling price first, okay? Got it? So yes, we are calculating the profit because it's a profit to volume chart, but instead of taking the total profit like we did in this scenario in the case of constant mix, like we did over here, right? We took the total profit of all the 3 products. We are not doing the same thing over here because now it says that in order of highest selling price first. So you know that we just saw that B has the highest selling price. So I first mark the profit of B, okay? Now the second is C. The second is C, okay? Because C has the second highest selling price. So let's go to C. Let's see if C has the second highest price. Yes, see, $50 is the first one and second is the $45. So C has the second highest selling price. So now we are going to use C. We are going to take out the profit of C. So C has a contribution of how much? 5 and the units are 1,500, right? So 5 into 1,500, I got 7,500 as my total contribution, right? And I'm going to subtract this with 40,000, and that is going to give me 32,500 as my loss. Negative 32,500, that is my loss, right? So how many units were there? 1,500, right? So add 1,500 units, which would be somewhere over here, right? Just a rough estimate, 1,500 units somewhere over here. I'm making a loss of 32,500. That should be somewhere over here. Okay. And the first point would be over here, because at 0 units, you just incur the 40,000 fixed costs, right? So for all the three, the fixed cost point would be the same, because all the three products have the same fixed cost, which is 40,000, right? So this is how it works. Okay. And now lastly, we have A, which has the lowest selling price, right? So it would be made at the last. Let's go to A. So the A selling price is 40 and contribution was 10. So 10 contribution and 1,000 units. So 10 times 1,000 is going to be 10,000 contribution. Subtract this with 40,000 fixed costs. So you'll be making a $30,000 loss. Okay. Now in this case, yes, you are making loss in all the three scenarios, but that would not be the case in every question, right? Because remember, this question is just a rough question. It's a example question that is made by me, right? When the real question, you can have profits, you can have loss, it can be anything, okay? So at 1,000 units, because A had 1,000 units, right? So at 1,000 units, we are making a loss of 30,000. At 1,000 units, we are making a loss of 30,000, okay? So it should be somewhere over here. And the fixed cost point would be same over here, 40,000, because like I said before, that fixed cost would be the same for all of these products, okay? And now all you have to do is to join these points with the help of a line, right? Like this. So the line would be like this, right? It doesn't have to be a proper straight line or anything, right? Just combine the points with a freehand, right? And that is going to be your profit to volume chart. Is that clear? Right? Now in this case, all of them was giving me a loss, right? If they would have been giving me a profit, for example, let's just assume that at 4,000 units, you incur a profit of 40,000, for example, right? So you would have made the graph like this, right? So that is very much possible. No problem in that, okay? So this is how the things change if they ask you to draw the graph in order of highest selling price first, right? So we did calculate the profit because it's a profit to volume chart. So obviously we will calculate the profit, but we calculate the profit individually by first identifying the product with the highest selling price. So we made the graph of that first, then the one with the second highest selling price, and then the one with the least highest selling price, right? Because the question said that the graph is made in order of highest selling price first, right? So I hope now you have understood the difference between constant mix and when they say in order of highest selling price first, okay? Now remember that they can not only say that the graph would be made in order of highest selling price first, they can also say that it is made in order of highest demand, okay? In order of highest demand. They can also say this. So the working would be the same. Just that instead of, making the graph in order of highest selling price first, you will look at the demand. So let's say if we were to make the graph in order of highest demand, then obviously B would be made first because it has the highest demand. Then would come C because C has the second highest demand. And then lastly, we will make A because it has the least demand, right? So this is how you're going to rank it. And then you're going to calculate the profit of the B first, then C and A. You're going to plot your points and draw the graph, okay? So this is how these things work. I hope it is clear. Alright guys, so that is it. Now with that, our GP analysis chapter has been completed. Alright, now make sure whatever I've taught you guys about the charts, just understand it because you are supposed to just understand it, okay? You would not be required to draw the graphs. I've been repeating them again and again. You would not be tested on drawing the graph because on a CBE, you cannot draw the graph, right? So what you can have is the question related to the graphs, which you can see in the past papers also in the Kaplan Kit on the Study Hub. So you can only attempt them once you have the knowledge of how these graphs work, how they are drawn, right? So that's why I have taught you guys how to draw them. So you can tackle any question with ease. Okay. And if you think that these videos were helpful for you guys in any way possible, please support me by subscribing the channel, liking the videos, and share these videos as much as you can with your colleagues, with your friends, whoever is giving the PM exam. I'm gonna meet you guys in the next video. Till then, take care. Have a great day. Goodbye.